So in this video, I'm going to change the way you make chords in FL Studio. So I'm going to show you how to go from this to this. So the first thing you're going to do is add more notes. I know they say less is more, but in this case, less is boring, especially when the whole keyboard and the chord progression is one of the main things in your tracks. So you have to add more notes. In adding more notes, the first thing you're going to add is the bass note. So the bass note is just the root note of each chord down an octave. So I'm going to add the bass note now and play the before and after for you. So this is the before. And this is the after. So if you're wearing headphones and you're using good speakers, you'll notice that the whole chord progression now has more weight than before. So this is why you need to add the bass note, but be careful about adding the bass note, especially when your track has more low end or much low end, or maybe when the whole chord progression is at a very low octave. So you shouldn't be worried about adding the bass note then. What you should be worried about is the mid-range and the highs and the mid-range. But apart from that, in this case you can add the bass note and it's going to sound wonderful. So before we continue, there's something I do to my chord progressions to extract the melody. So what I do is I move the thirds in each chord up an octave. So if you don't know what the third is, this is the first and this is the third and this is the fifth. So all these things now make up a triad. So what I do is I move the thirds up an octave. So I'm going to move them up an octave and play the before and after. So this is the before and this is the after. So as you can see, it's like the chord is coming to life. The chord has more weight and it's also bright at the same time. So this is something I always do. I almost do it in every track that I'm working on, but not every time, but almost every time. So the next thing you are going to add is something called a pedal tone. So a pedal tone is just a note that you're going to sustain throughout the whole chord progression. Just one note that you're going to sustain throughout the whole chord progression. So not just any note, but a note that you know that is going to sound good in each chord progression. So I'm going to be using this note for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sustain this note throughout the whole chord progression. Then I'm going to play it for you. So as you can see, the chord progression now has another vibe. So why I do all these things is that I try to make my chords sound different, because this chord progression now, another person is going to use this exact chord progression. So what you're going to do is you have to make your chord sound different. You have to make it a little bit different so that when people hear it, they're not going to be like, oh, I know this thing, I know this, I know this chord, I know this chord. So it's going to be like different. You're going to make it more unique. So people now, they love something that is unique more than the others. That's why I add all these things. That's why I say add more notes. So add more notes that that are going to sound good in your chord progression. So the next thing I'm going to add is a top line melody or a counter melody. So you can use another plugin or another instrument for this, but I'm just going to stick with this. So by the way, what I'm using for this whole thing is the Labs from Spitfire Audio. It's a free plugin, so you can go and check it out if you want. And also, before we continue, I'm going to be making a lot of free plugin videos, and I'm going to be making a lot of beginner tutorials. So if you're a beginner, please subscribe and turn on the notification so that you can get notified anytime I make a video. And also like this video and also subscribe. I think I've said that before, so sorry. So as you can see, I've done this whole chord progression before. I had to duplicate it for this tutorial. So you can see the ghost note. So I'm just going to click it in to avoid wasting time. I'm going to play the before and after for you. So I'm going to play before we added anything, before we've done anything, and then now that I've added all these things. You can notice that the chord now sounds like a different thing altogether, but it's the same chord, but it has a different vibe and is more interesting now than before. So this is also the reason why you have to add some things to your chord progression to make it sound more interesting. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with the timing of the chord. So you know when you play a piano by hand, sometimes you are off time. Sometimes the whole keys you play, if you play it at the same time, they don't always land at the same time. Some of them are slightly out of time. So that's why you have things like swing in music in FL Studio, like you have a knob for swing. And also when you go to tools in the piano roll, you see the option for strum. So it also does the same thing. But me personally, although you can use the strum to mess with the timing of your chord progression, but me, I don't use it because I do it by hand, because using the strum makes it sound, to me, makes it sound more computerized and robotic. But if I do it by hand, there are some things that I just mess with. There are some things there are some ones that I just leave. There are some ones that I move out of time slightly depending on what I'm going for. So another thing that we are going to do is mess with the velocity. So the velocity, if you don't know what the velocity means, the velocity is how hard the note is struck when it is played. So I do almost the same thing that I do with the timing. I do almost the same thing with the velocity. So the velocity, I like to do it by hand also. So what I do is I copy the ones that I want to mess with, and then I notch them down a little bit depending on how I want it to sound. So you can go crazy with this. You can do it slightly depending on what you are going for. So I'm going to play the before and after because I've already added two things now to it. I've messed with the timing and I've also messed with the velocity. So I'm going to play what it sounds like with all these things. It's sounding more human now than before. Leave a comment on the comment section on anything you want me to cover or anything you want me to throw more light on. So the next tip I'm going to give you is mess with the pattern of your chord progression. So I'm going to use another chord progression for this one. So as you can see, this chord progression is just basic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with the pattern and then play the before and after. So this is the before and this is the after. So you can go crazy with this. You can do any pattern you want to do, no matter how crazy you think it is. So I'm just doing this basic one for the video. Normally, the type of pattern I use is I mess with it, I go with the flow. I do anything that comes inside my head. So this is music. There's no right or wrong in it. That's why I'm saying go crazy with it. So the next tip I'm going to give you guys is use plugins and effect to mess with your chord progression. So I have this basic chord progression. What I'm going to use, I'm going to pull out Valhalla Supermassive. So Valhalla Supermassive is just a free plugin. It's more like a delay and also a reverb type of plugin. So if I run the chord into it, it's going to give me a type of maybe another vibe or another type of pattern that I wasn't even thinking about. So that's why I use plugins. So I'm going to play this and mess with the Supermassive a little bit so that you can see what I'm talking about. So another plugin that I use is the gross beat. So the gross beat is just more like something that I use to mess with even vocals, even anything, especially people that do EDM music, they use it a lot. If I'm not getting any vibe at the moment, if I'm, that sometimes in music that you are uninspired, you don't know what to create, you're looking for something to just give you a spark or give you a push.